Which glasses are going to work better? This is Jeff Dossrum on a beautiful sunny day in Dallas, Texas. I almost glanced over that this National Vietnam Veterans Honorary Day. I saw a few posts and just kind of skimmed by and was like, eh. But then something touched me, and I really haven't written anything in depth of great importance lately. So I sat down, put some thoughts together, honoring the men and women that served in one of the most thankless wars the United States has been in next to the Korean conflict. Now, I will add, I never served. I wanted to be in the Seabees. When I got out of high school, I went to the recruiter, I took the test, I passed their nuclear engineering school test by 1 point, and that's what they wanted me to go into. Well, I'd do well on standardized tests, and I told the recruiter, I'm sorry, but this would be an epic failure. Because my buddy Rand took the test with me. He scored like second highest in the state of Oklahoma. He washed out in 2 years, and Randy was a straight A, photogenic individual. And if it crushed him, it was the right choice. But since we weren't at war in 1978, they didn't need Seabees. That sucked. That's all there is to it. It sucked. Okay. I hope you enjoy this. It's entitled, It Wasn't That Long Ago. It wasn't that long ago when I was living carefree, playing baseball, basketball, chasing girls, catching a flick, swiping a few pieces of gum, collecting baseball cards, downing an ice-cold Coke on a hot summer's day, or picking up a few bucks shoveling snow. And who could forget dragging down Maine as Mike's wingman or getting all decked out for the prom, where we knew Billy would spike the punch. It wasn't that long ago. I fondly remember deep discussions with my buds on the best way to unfasten that damn bra strap. One would have thought we were aspiring mechanical engineers with all the gimmicks and ideas we formulated. It was Kevin that had the most astute idea. Just ask them to do it for you. Damn! No wonder we knew he would be a brain surgeon someday. He could break down any problem with a simple solution, and you know what? It worked. It wasn't that long ago. When my country came calling, my dad served, my uncles and we all strived to excel at. I was barracked with a bunch of great guys from all over the country. I'd never heard so many accents in my life. Those guys from the Northeast sounded like they came from Mars or Venus, and those from Michigan and Wisconsin, hell, Webster's could have a dictionary just for them. As for myself, well, they fought with my West Texas drawl. Think some of them still trying to figure out the word wire. Made sense to me. It wasn't that long ago when we flew into Vietnam. It was the hottest, wettest, muggiest place I'd ever been to. Within minutes, our fatigues were drenched and the smell of jet fuel permeated our very core. It was horrible. But hey, we were here to defeat communism and save the South Vietnamese from the Red Menace. I'll never forget those guys rotating home. The look on their faces was nothing like I'd seen before. They weren't upbeat like us. They were combat veterans ready to get the hell out of Dodge and fast. I remember one guy, he looked me straight in the eyes. Junior, keep your head down, socks dry, and your ass even lower. Do that, and you might survive. While his words might have been prophetic, his eyes shocked me into reality. I saw my dad's eyes in his. It wasn't that long ago. I spent nothing short of a year in hell. Nothing in training could or would prepare one for the horrors I couldn't even imagine in my worst nightmares. The popping of flares, followed by the rain of mortar shells, the screams of my buddies as shrapnel found a home and shredded their young bodies, covering the ground with body parts and spilt life-sustaining blood. No matter how hard I tried, I could never wash out the smell of cordite or copper off. It stuck to one like glue. If that wasn't bad enough, the daylight sweeps weren't any better. You never knew when someone would step on a mine or punji stake. Those damn things were everywhere and deadly as hell. One could lose a leg in the blink of an eye or get an infection so horrendous you could watch that damn thing fester in an hour. And without proper medical attention, one became the unwilling host for a fly convention. I remember one guy was so bad, maggots had hatched and were enjoying a fine feast on a buddy's arm. Reminded me of rice kernels boiling in a pot, only it was his arm. To this day, I cannot eat rice. It wasn't that long ago. I had served my country and served it well, or at least as well as the higher-ups allowed us. Unlike my dad and relatives, they had a mission. Win. Ours was to live to see another day and hope the next body bag wasn't yours. I now knew what that guy a year ago was talking about in the sage advice he passed on. It worked. I was going home with a chest full of ribbons and medals, but never really accepted or appreciated them, for I now knew what my dad had meant when he said, "It's a very, very heavy price." It wasn't that long ago. I returned home, no brass bands, no cheering crowds, only a country that had turned against the war and those of us who fought it. I was ready to get back to normal and hang up my uniform for good. Dad got me a job at the feedlot. We didn't talk much during those years. We both kept to ourselves. Occasionally we'd drown a worm, shoot a buck, or scurry the quails, but not much else. It wasn't that long ago. I'd been home for 15 years. Nothing much had changed. Dad had retired and I was moving up the ranks. I came home from work, grabbed a beer, and sat by my dad on the front porch. It was a quiet, still, muggy night with a nice breeze. The only sound were the crickets chirping away and the locusts buzzing about. Looking up, the stars were so brilliant, one had to squint. After a few sips, I looked at Dad. I could tell he was looking into the past. How? Small tears kept forming around the corners of his eyes. Why? I didn't know. Were they for Mom when she died 10 years ago from cancer? Or something else? I didn't know. He took a sip of his tea, then cleared his throat. "Lee, it's time." "Time for what?" "It's time." He got up and went inside. It wasn't that long ago. I found myself on a plane headed to D.C. I didn't know why, and Dad wasn't talking. He only stared into the past, whispering words. Only he knew. The plane landed and we boarded. He held a cab and gave the driver a destination after loading what little luggage he'd packed. He nodded solemnly and headed into the city. The driver stopped on schedule. Dad looked at me. "Lee, don't ask questions, please. Just do as I request so we can both heal." The words puzzled me, but okay. "Sure, Dad, whatever you want." When he opened his carry-on, I saw his and mine old uniforms. "Dad?" "Please, Lee, don't ask." Reluctantly, I put my old jacket on, and so did Dad. "Follow me." It wasn't that long ago. We walked towards a plaza with a big black granite wall. I noticed other veterans milling about, not saying a word. I felt like I was going to a church. It was so damn quiet. The closer we got, I could make out words on the wall. But what were they? Then slowly I began to see the writing was names. But names of whom? I then noticed it wasn't a continual wall, but panels, and each panel had a date on it. The names of the 58,301 men and women who fell in that awful war. I had never given myself the time to grieve for those who I lost or were badly wounded. I wanted that memory dead and buried. I did my best, but on this day, it all flooded back and consumed me. The tears fell freely and fast. My dad was there to support me as my knees began buckling. Other veterans noticed my dilemma and came to help without a word being spoken. What I didn't notice is they were also helping my dad keep his balance, for he too was weeping for his fallen comrades and friends. And believe it or not, those brave men that came to our rescue, as they had in the battlefields we shared, wept with us. I don't know how long we cried together. It didn't matter. We were sharing something no one would understand. And it's taken decades for this country to appreciate the sacrifice that they made. I'm old enough to remember when the draft dodgers were hailed, came back as true patriots and rebels. And yet the men and women who went over there to fight for our country were looked on as villains and baby killers. They were doing the job our government had sent them to do. It was our government that failed them every step of the way. Now we know they never went over there to win. Nixon tried, but the press went nuts when he bombed Cambodia and Laos. Hell, that's where the NVA were staging. You go where the enemy is. No, we weren't at war with those countries. But if they're giving aid and comfort to the enemy, by God, you go in and you take them out. You know, would it have turned into the same type of war that we've been entrenched in for 20 years in Afghanistan? Well, according to General Gipp, if the bombing of Hanoi wouldn't have been stopped, in 2 weeks they wouldn't have had a choice but to surrender. And if a formal treaty was signed, would the war have ended? We'll never know. But all the politicians and all the people that sneered and jeered and spit on our soldiers and didn't give them the means to fight that war should all be ashamed of themselves. Every damn last one of them should be ashamed for the way they treated those men and women who fought for their country. And that's all I have on this Monday afternoon. Have a good day.